Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with Charm Stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section. Also generously hit the like button cause it means the world to us. Please sit back, relax and enjoy as we dive into the story. Lucas Steele was a very rich man. He owned many buildings and businesses all over the world. One night, Lucas held a big party at his newest hotel, the Celestial Plaza Hotel. The lobby was huge and shiny, filled with chandeliers that sparkled like stars. All the important and famous people in town were there, dressed in beautiful clothes and smiling for cameras. At the front door, photographers took many pictures. Bright flashes lit up the night like lightning. Lucas loved the attention. He always had a charming smile, and he greeted his guests like a perfect host. But deep inside, Lucas felt a little empty. Each time he smiled for the cameras, he thought, "Is this what matters? Do I really feel happy?" That same evening, a kind and shy waitress named Clara Wells stood in the corner of the ballroom. She wore a simple black uniform and held a tray of sparkling drinks. Her brown hair was tied back in a neat bun, and her eyes were warm but tired. Although Clara was not rich or famous, she carried herself with quiet strength. Clara had been working long hours. She needed the extra money to take care of her twin boys, Ethan and Liam, who were 5 years old. Nobody at the party knew about her children. Clara preferred to keep her personal life private, especially in a place filled with gossip and bright lights. As the night went on, Clara walked around the room, offering drinks to the guests. She noticed Lucas Steele, standing in the center of a large circle of admirers. They looked at him with awe, like he was a king. Lucas laughed and told stories about his trips around the globe. He talked about fancy deals and big projects. Everyone clapped and cheered. Clara tried not to stare, but she couldn't help it. This man seemed to have everything: money, power, and endless confidence. But there was a look in his eyes, a flicker of sadness, that made Clara wonder if he was truly happy. Suddenly, the crowd shifted, and someone bumped into Clara. Her tray wobbled, and she almost dropped the glasses. She managed to steady herself, but one glass slipped and fell to the floor with a loud crash. Lucas turned his head when he heard the sound. Their eyes met briefly. Clara's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She bent down quickly to clean up the broken glass, afraid she might lose her job if she didn't fix the mess right away. But instead of ignoring her, Lucas broke away from the group of people and walked over. He knelt down and helped pick up the larger pieces of glass with his handkerchief. Clara looked up, surprised and a little nervous. "Thank you, sir," she said in a quiet voice. "Are you all right?" Lucas asked softly, his voice polite. "You didn't cut yourself, did you?" Clara shook her head. "No, I'm fine. I'm so sorry about this. I hope I haven't caused any trouble." Lucas smiled, and for the first time that evening, his smile seemed real. "Don't worry," he said. "Accidents happen. I'd rather help than stand by while you do all this alone." Clara nodded shyly. She felt a strange warm feeling in her chest. Nobody so important had ever spoken to her in such a kind way. Lucas handed the broken glass pieces to a nearby staff member, who quickly threw them away. Then he stood up and offered Clara his hand. She hesitated for a moment, not used to such kindness from someone as wealthy as Lucas. Still, she accepted his help and rose to her feet. "Thank you," she said again, bowing her head a little. Lucas looked around at the fancy decorations, the camera lights, and the guests who were all pretending not to stare at him. "To be honest," he said quietly, "this party is wearing me out. Sometimes I wonder if there's more to life than all these bright lights and big speeches." Clara was surprised that such a powerful man would say something so personal. "I think everyone needs a break now and then," she offered. Her words seemed to make Lucas think. After a pause, he gave her one more gentle smile. "I hope we talk again," he said. "Enjoy the rest of your night." With that, he walked back to his guests, but he kept glancing at Clara from time to time. Each time their eyes met, he felt a spark in his chest. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had seemed so real to him. Clara tried to focus on her job, but her mind kept drifting. Why had Lucas Steele, the billionaire, been so kind and thoughtful? And why did he look at her like he wanted to know more about her? By midnight, the party ended. The big chandeliers were dimmed, and most guests went home, still laughing and talking about deals and parties. Clara, exhausted, helped the last guests to the door, then gathered her things to leave. Before she could slip out, she spotted Lucas again, standing by a window, looking out at the city lights. He glanced back and saw her. Their eyes met once more. For a moment, the world felt quiet. Clara gave a small, polite nod and left. As she walked away, she felt a strange excitement. She had a sense that something in her life had shifted, even if she couldn't quite say how. A few hours later, long after the grand opening party ended, Clara found herself standing outside, waiting for a taxi. The night was cool, and a soft breeze brushed against her face. She was glad the night was over, but her mind was still full of questions. Suddenly, a sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down, and Clara was surprised to see Lucas. "Clara, right?" he said, leaning over the passenger seat. Clara nodded, her heart thumping a little louder. "I saw you waiting here," he continued. "It's late. Could I offer you a ride home?" Clara hesitated. She didn't want any rumors to start. She was just a waitress, and he was a billionaire. But it was late, and she had no car. Plus, this man had been unexpectedly kind. So, she decided to trust her instincts. "Okay," she said softly, stepping into the car. They drove through the silent streets, the city lights twinkling like fireflies in the distance. At first, they didn't talk, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. After a few minutes, Lucas broke the stillness. "You seemed different tonight," he said. "You weren't trying to impress me or anyone else. Everyone around me usually pretends. But you're real." Clara shrugged. "I'm just a waitress trying to do my job," she answered. Lucas smiled a bit. "That's exactly what I mean," he said. "No games. No tricks. It's refreshing." They both laughed softly. Then Lucas asked if he could take her somewhere for a late-night snack or coffee. Clara thought about it. Usually, she would say no to a stranger. But something about Lucas made her feel safe. So, they ended up at a small, cozy cafe that stayed open all night. The shop was nearly empty, which made it easier for them to talk. Over hot chocolate and a plate of warm cookies, Lucas asked Clara about her life. "Where are you from, Clara?" he asked gently. She stirred her hot chocolate. "I'm from a small town a few hours away. I moved here to make more money. My family needed help, so I came to the city to work." Lucas nodded. "That must be hard," he said. "Do you live by yourself?" Clara hesitated, thinking about Ethan and Liam. She didn't want to reveal too much, so she just said, "Yes, I live alone." She felt a little guilty for not mentioning her boys, but she reasoned that it was better to keep them safe and private. Lucas didn't push further. Instead, he talked about his own life. "I grew up in a wealthy home," he explained. "My father was tough, always pushing me to be the best. I learned how to run businesses, how to make deals. Now, I have all this money and power, but sometimes I wonder if any of it really matters." Clara listened carefully. She noticed how his eyes clouded over when he spoke of his father. It sounded like Lucas's childhood had been lonely. She began to see that Lucas was not just a big, powerful man. He was also human, with fears and doubts like everyone else. They ended up talking for hours. Lucas told funny stories about traveling the world, meeting famous people, and making huge deals. Clara listened and laughed at the silly parts, especially the time Lucas had mistaken a fancy napkin for a tablecloth and caused a small accident at a royal dinner. In return, Clara talked about her childhood memories. The time she first rode a bicycle without training wheels, the day she learned how to swim. She left out details about Ethan and Liam, but she did speak about her love for children in general. "They're so full of life," she said. "They believe in magic and happy endings." Lucas nodded, smiling at how passionately Clara spoke. The night grew older, and the cafe staff gave them polite smiles, clearly happy to see two people enjoying each other's company. Eventually, they realized it was nearly dawn. Lucas insisted on driving Clara home. When they arrived at her small apartment building, They sat quietly in the car for a moment. "I had a good time," Lucas said, his voice soft. "Me too," Clara replied. And she meant it. She hadn't felt so free in ages. They looked at each other in the dim light. Something unspoken passed between them, a mix of curiosity, friendship, and a spark of something more. Finally, Clara said goodbye and slipped out of the car, thanking Lucas again for everything. As Lucas drove away, he felt a strange sense of peace and excitement all at once. This wasn't part of his usual routine. This was something different. Maybe even something real. Back in her apartment, Clara quietly opened the door so she wouldn't wake up her neighbor, who sometimes checked in on her boys at night. She tiptoed into the bedroom and looked at Ethan and Liam, fast asleep, their little faces calm and sweet. Clara's heart felt heavy with a strange mixture of joy and worry. What was she doing spending time with a man like Lucas Steele? She knew her life was complicated. She had 2 little boys who needed her. She couldn't risk getting carried away. She decided then and there that whatever had happened that night would stay in the past. She couldn't let it grow into something bigger. She had her twins to protect, and she couldn't let them get hurt by the chaos that might follow if Lucas found out. But even as she thought this, she couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just begun. A few years passed after that night. Clara did not see Lucas again and tried to move on with her life. She worked at a small diner in a quiet town, far from the city's constant noise and bright lights. Life was simple here. Customers came in for eggs and pancakes in the morning, sandwiches at lunch, and maybe a slice of pie at dinner. Every day, Clara woke up early. She helped her twin boys, Ethan and Liam, get ready for school. Both boys had bright smiles and curious minds. They had brown hair that curled a bit around their ears, and they both shared the same striking eyes that matched Lucas's. But Clara never told them about their father. She worried it would only confuse them or bring trouble. Ethan and Liam were happy children. They liked drawing pictures of superheroes and animals. They laughed easily and rarely complained. Clara felt grateful, though she sometimes felt guilty that she couldn't give them everything they wanted. After dropping the twins off at school, Clara would head to the diner. She wore a simple uniform with a white apron, and her kind face made everyone feel welcome. She greeted each customer with a friendly smile, took orders, served coffee, and listened to people's stories. Some days were busier than others, but Clara never complained. She needed the money, and she also enjoyed helping people. At night, she would pick up Ethan and Liam from their after-school program. They would walk home together, discussing the day's events. Liam might talk about a new song he learned in music class, while Ethan might talk about a cool science experiment. Clara would hold their small hands and smile, feeling content with this quiet life. But deep inside, Clara sometimes wondered about Lucas. She remembered the kindness in his eyes that night. She sometimes caught herself thinking, would he have been a good father? But then she would remind herself of how complicated his world was. She didn't want that for her boys. So she kept her secret. Meanwhile, Lucas's life continued at full speed. He traveled across countries, signed major deals, and built more hotels. He was on the covers of magazines, photographed at glamorous events. People praised his business skills and admired his lifestyle. But late at night, when the parties were over, he would sometimes think back to that simple waitress, Clara, who had talked to him like a normal person. He remembered her warm smile and how she had listened without judging him. However, Lucas never tried to find Clara. With everything happening in his life, he simply pushed that memory aside, thinking it was just a fleeting moment. Little did he know how important that moment had been. Then one day, fate decided to bring them back together. Lucas was looking to buy property in a small town for a new project. It was a secret plan, so he traveled without his usual group of assistants and bodyguards. He wanted to see the place with his own eyes first. Lucas stepped out of his black car in front of a little diner. The sign was old and a bit faded, but the smell of fresh coffee and bacon made his stomach rumble. He decided to go in and see if the place was worth buying, or at least to get some breakfast. As he opened the door, a little bell jingled. He took off his sunglasses, letting his eyes adjust to the bright morning sun streaming in. The diner was cozy, a row of booths on one side, a counter with stools on the other, and old pictures on the walls. "Take any seat you like," A cheerful voice called out from behind the counter. Lucas walked to an empty booth and sat down. He tapped his foot lightly, glancing at the menu. He felt a little out of place, dressed in his fine suit and expensive shoes in such a humble setting. Still, the warm atmosphere made him feel oddly comfortable. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. "Hello, my name is Clara. What can I get for you today?" Lucas's head snapped up. Clara. He found himself staring at the same woman he had met years ago. She looked older, maybe more tired, but still had that gentle warmth he remembered. He was so surprised he almost forgot to speak. Clara also froze. She recognized him immediately, Lucas Steele. Her heart began pounding. She worried that he would ask questions, that he might see her children sitting at a booth or talk to them. Her thoughts raced. He can't find out about the twins, she thought. He just can't. Lucas finally cleared his throat. "Clara," he said softly, with a small smile of disbelief on his face. Clara swallowed hard. "Yes, Lucas," she replied, her voice shaking a little. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Memories of that night flooded them both. Then Clara forced herself to be calm. She was at work. She had to be professional. "What would you like to order?" she asked politely, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. Lucas glanced down at the menu, then back up at her. I'll take the breakfast special," he said, but his eyes never left her face. Clara nodded, scribbling on her notepad. "Sure thing," she said. "Anything to drink?" "Just coffee," Lucas managed to say. She walked away to place his order. Her hands trembled as she poured the coffee, remembering how she had sat in a cafe with this man once, talking and laughing like old friends. That night seemed so far away now. "I have to stay calm," she told herself. "This might be just a coincidence, but I have to protect Ethan and Liam." A few minutes later, she returned with a steaming plate of eggs, bacon, toast, and a cup of coffee. She set them before Lucas with forced composure. He thanked her, but his voice was filled with curiosity and confusion. "Clara, can we talk?" he asked, looking around the diner. "Somewhere private?" She hesitated. I'm working now," she said, trying not to meet his eyes. Lucas nodded slowly, understanding that she was scared or maybe just nervous. "I'm here for a few days," he offered. "I'd really like to catch up." Clara forced a tight smile. "We'll see," she replied softly, then turned to help another customer. Though she tried to hide it, her mind was racing. How will I keep Ethan and Liam a secret from him? Across the diner, two little boys sat in a booth, drawing pictures while waiting for their mom to finish her shift. They were Ethan and Liam. They glanced over at the fancy man talking to their mother. Liam noticed his suit and shiny shoes, while Ethan noticed how tall he was. Neither child imagined that the stranger was their father. After finishing his breakfast, Lucas stayed in the diner longer than usual, hoping to speak with Clara when she wasn't busy. But the diner was buzzing with morning customers, and she seemed determined to avoid any real conversation. Still, Lucas watched her from a distance. He remembered how she had looked in that fancy hotel years ago, nervous yet strong. Now, she looked just as strong, if not stronger, but also guarded. He wondered why she had left so suddenly back then, disappearing without a trace. His eyes wandered to a pair of little boys giggling at a table. They were drawing crayon pictures of rockets and robots. Something about them made Lucas's heart flutter. They had a certain sparkle in their eyes, a sparkle that reminded him of someone. Could it be? He thought, shaking his head. Lucas decided he would talk to Clara outside of work. He left the diner, leaving a generous tip on the table, and went to check into a small, local inn. He could have stayed at a 5-star hotel, but for this trip, he wanted to keep things simple and unnoticed. He planned to visit the property he was scouting, but his mind kept drifting back to Clara. Meanwhile, Clara's shift ended around noon. She tried to calm her nerves as she wiped down the counters and tables. She had spotted Lucas watching Ethan and Liam. Fear twisted in her gut. She knew the boys looked a lot like him, especially around the eyes and the shape of their faces. She had to get her kids out of there before Lucas asked too many questions. So once she was done, She hurried over to Ethan and Liam. "Boys, let's go," she said quickly, helping them put their crayons away. "Ah, Mom, I was almost done with my rocket ship," Ethan complained. "Can't we stay a little longer?" Liam chimed in. "Not today, sweeties," Clara said, forcing a smile. "We have to go home and get ready for tomorrow's school day." The twins groaned but followed her obediently. She guided them out of the diner, keeping a watchful eye out the window in case Lucas was still around. Once outside, they hurried down the sidewalk toward their small apartment. Clara glanced over her shoulder every few steps, her heart racing. She couldn't see Lucas anywhere, which gave her a momentary sense of relief. But later that afternoon, as she was folding laundry in her living room, the phone rang. She picked it up, expecting maybe her boss or a friend. Instead, she heard a familiar deep voice. "Clara," said Lucas. "It's me, Lucas." Her breath caught in her throat. "How did you get my number?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I asked the diner manager," he admitted. "I told him it was important. Don't be angry with him, I can be pretty persuasive." "What do you want, Lucas?" she asked. There was a pause. "I just want to talk," he said, sounding genuine. "No big crowds, no cameras. Just us." Clara clenched the phone tight. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," Lucas insisted gently. "I've been thinking about you for years. I just want to know how you've been." Clara felt torn. She remembered the connection they had shared, that brief glimpse of something real. But she also had her boys to consider. "Fine," she finally said, her voice small. "We can talk for a little while. But not tonight. I have to help my kids." "Your kids?" Lucas repeated, sounding surprised. Clara bit her lip, realizing she had slipped up. "Yes. I have children," she said, trying to sound casual. She didn't say they were twins or how old they were. There was another pause on the line. "All right," Lucas said softly, as if he sensed there was more to the story. "How about tomorrow afternoon? I'll pick you up after your shift." Clara sighed. Maybe it was better to handle this now than to let it linger. "Fine," she said, "but please be discreet." Lucas agreed, and they hung up. Clara leaned against the wall, feeling shaky. She stared at the laundry basket full of tiny t-shirts and pants, her mind spinning. I have to tell him something. But not everything. Her goal was to keep the boys safe. She still believed Lucas's world was dangerous, full of reporters, paparazzi, and people who would only cause them trouble. That night, Clara tucked Ethan and Liam into bed. They each wanted a story, so she read them a short book about a brave knight who protected his kingdom from dragons. As she read, she couldn't help thinking about how she protected her own children from a world that might harm them. After the boys fell asleep, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Lucas's eyes, the kindness he had shown her years ago, and the look of curiosity and confusion he had now. She wondered if she was doing the right thing by hiding the truth. They deserve to know their father, don't they? A small voice in her head whispered. But she pushed that thought aside. I'm doing this for their own good. Tomorrow, she would face Lucas again. And she wasn't sure she was ready. The next day felt like a whirlwind. Clara worked her shift to the diner, but she was so distracted that she nearly spilled coffee twice and took the wrong order to one table. The only thing on her mind was the meeting with Lucas. When her shift ended, she cleaned up quickly and said goodbye to her coworkers. As she stepped outside, she saw Lucas parked in a discreet car, as promised. He rolled down the window and smiled, though the smile looked tentative, almost shy. She got in, and they drove to a quiet park on the edge of town. The park had a small pond with ducks and geese swimming lazily. The afternoon sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of old oak trees. They found a secluded bench under a tall tree. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lucas cleared his throat. Clara, he began, I'm really happy to see you, but I'm also confused. Why did you leave that morning without a word? I never heard from you again. Clara looked down at her hands. She remembered waking up early that morning years ago, slipping out of a fancy hotel room, and leaving behind the life she knew she couldn't have. I had reasons, she said softly. It wasn't personal, Lucas. Lucas nodded, though he still looked hurt. I missed you, he admitted. You were different from anyone I'd met. And then you were gone. Clara sighed. Lucas, you have a life that's so big and full of cameras and reporters. I don't belong in that world. I have responsibilities that go far beyond myself. Lucas remembered what Clara had said on the phone about her children. You mentioned you have kids, he said gently. Tell me about them. Clara's eyes flickered with worry. She decided in that moment that it was useless to keep dodging. I have twin boys, she said. They're 5 years old. Their names are Ethan and Liam. They're the most wonderful part of my life. Lucas's eyes widened. 5 years old, he thought, doing the math in his head. His mind whirled. Clara, are they mine? She tensed, feeling her heart pound like a drum. She had known this question would come. Lucas sighed. Clara, please, he pleaded, a mix of desperation and hope in his voice. Tell me the truth. She took a deep breath. She couldn't keep lying, not when he was sitting right there, looking so earnest. Yes, she whispered. They are your children. Lucas's breath caught. He stared at her, shock evident on his face. For a moment, he didn't say a word, as if trying to process the reality of it. My children, he repeated, almost in disbelief. I have 2 sons. Clara nodded, tears threatening to spill. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, she said, her voice trembling. I was scared. Your world is so loud and busy. I just wanted them to have a normal life. Lucas felt a swirl of emotions. Surprise, anger, excitement, betrayal, joy, and sadness, all tangled together. But Clara, he finally managed to say, I had the right to know. She nodded, her head bowed. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the only sound being the soft rustle of leaves. Lucas looked out at the pond where ducks were pecking at breadcrumbs left by children. I'm a father, he thought, still grappling with the idea. I have 2 sons I've never met. Eventually, he turned to Clara, tears in his eyes. I want to see them, he said firmly. I want to be a part of their lives. Clara braced herself. Lucas, please understand, she said. I'm afraid of the chaos this will bring. The media, your business rivals. What if they find out and harass my boys? They're just 5. They don't deserve to be hounded by strangers. Lucas swallowed hard. He knew she had a point. He also knew that, as a billionaire, his personal life was always under scrutiny. But they're my children, he insisted, more gently this time. I have to meet them. I promise I'll do everything I can to protect them. Clara wiped a tear from her cheek. She felt torn between wanting to protect her kids' simple life and the knowledge that they deserved to know their father. She finally nodded. All right, she said, voice shaky. But we do this slowly. One step at a time. Lucas agreed, his heart hammering with a mixture of relief and nervous excitement. He was determined to meet Ethan and Liam and be the father he never thought he'd be. He also felt angry that Clara had kept them a secret for so long. But the anger faded quickly, replaced by concern for the future. How will this change their lives? They stood from the bench, and Lucas hesitantly reached out, placing a hand on Clara's shoulder. She didn't pull away. They looked at each other, both filled with regret and hope. As they walked back to the car, Lucas asked, "When can I see them?" Clara exhaled. "Tomorrow," she said. "Come to the diner in the afternoon. I'll bring them by." Lucas nodded. They drove back in near silence, each lost in thought. When they reached Clara's apartment building, he parked the car. She paused before getting out. "Lucas, please keep this quiet," she said. "I don't want the media swarming us." He nodded. "I promise," he said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." The next day at the diner, Clara found herself more anxious than ever. Ethan and Liam were at school that morning, but they would join her later so Lucas could meet them. She kept wiping her sweaty palms on her apron, her heart racing. Lucas arrived a bit early and sat quietly at a corner table. He wore a casual shirt and jeans this time, trying to blend in. No one recognized him as the powerful billionaire from the news. He looked just like any other visitor. When the clock struck 3, Clara stepped out and returned with 2 small boys by her side. They walked into the diner, Ethan holding his mother's hand and Liam holding onto her apron. They were both curious and a little shy, peeking around. Clara guided them to Lucas's table. The moment he saw them, Lucas felt a lump in his throat. The boys had features that mirrored his own, especially their eyes, shaped just like his. It was like gazing into a mirror, a smaller, younger reflection of himself. "Boys," Clara said gently, crouching down to their level, "this is Lucas. He's an old friend of mine." Lucas couldn't speak for a moment. He just stared at them, his heart pounding. He longed to tell them, "I'm your dad. I love you so much already." But he knew he had to move carefully. "Hi," Liam said, smiling politely. "Hello," Ethan added, looking Lucas up and down. Lucas finally found his voice. "Hello, Ethan and Liam," he said gently. "It's nice to meet you." They all sat down at the table. Clara ordered some milkshakes for the boys, wanting to make them feel comfortable. Lucas tried to chat with them about school, their favorite games, and cartoons they liked. At first, they were a bit shy, but gradually, their natural curiosity took over. Liam showed Lucas a drawing of a dinosaur he had made. "This is a T-Rex," he explained proudly. Ethan chimed in with facts he had learned in class. They were really big and had sharp teeth. Lucas smiled, feeling a surge of love for these 2 bright, curious kids. He asked questions about their hobbies. Liam said he loved music and wanted to learn the piano someday. Ethan said he wanted to be a scientist who explored outer space. All the while, Clara watched, her heart torn. She felt guilty for keeping them away from each other. But she also felt protective. She wasn't sure what Lucas's intentions were. Would he stay in their lives, or would he leave them disappointed? As the afternoon went on, the boys warmed up to Lucas. They laughed when he made silly jokes, and they marveled at the magic trick he performed with a paper napkin and a spoon. Finally, Clara said it was time to go home. The boys needed to do their homework and prepare for bed. Lucas felt a pang of sadness, not wanting the time to end. "Can I see you again?" he asked the boys, looking at Clara for permission. The twins nodded eagerly. Clara paused, then agreed to another meeting, though she looked worried. She reminded Lucas again that this should remain a secret, at least for now. Lucas left the diner feeling more alive than he had in years. He realized that money and power meant nothing compared to the simple joy of hearing his children laugh. But he also felt a growing tension inside him. "I want to give them everything," he thought. "But how can I do that without dragging them into my complicated life?" Despite Clara's caution, Lucas couldn't help himself. Over the next few weeks, he began showering Ethan and Liam with gifts, new bikes, toys, and even fancy clothes. He set up a secret fund for their education, ensuring they would have enough money to attend the best schools or programs. But Clara disapproved. She confronted Lucas at the diner one evening. "Lucas, you can't keep spoiling them like this," she said, trying to keep her voice down. "They need a normal life." Lucas frowned. "They deserve the best," he insisted. "I can provide that." Clara shook her head, her eyes full of worry. "I understand you want to help, but you're overwhelming them. They're just kids. And you barely know them yet." Their argument grew tense. Lucas felt frustrated that Clara refused his help, while Clara felt anxious that Lucas was pushing too hard, too fast. Outside, Ethan and Liam sensed the tension, and their cheerful smiles began to fade. They didn't quite understand what their mother and Lucas were arguing about, but they knew it wasn't good. That night, Clara tucked the boys into bed, trying to reassure them that everything was fine. But she felt the weight of Lucas's presence growing heavier. "I just want them safe and happy," she thought. "Is that too much to ask?" Meanwhile, Lucas returned to his hotel room, feeling misunderstood and upset. He wanted to protect and care for his sons, but he realized he might be crossing Clara's boundaries. Still, he couldn't ignore how strongly he felt about giving Ethan and Liam every possible advantage in life. The stage was set for an even bigger clash of worlds. None of them knew that an even larger storm was brewing, one that would change their lives forever. Word travels fast in small towns, and it didn't take long for rumors to start. Neighbors noticed Clara spending time with a mysterious man. Some recognized him as Lucas Steele from magazines or TV segments about wealth and business. Before Clara or Lucas could stop it, a local reporter snapped a picture of them together outside the diner. That picture made its way to the internet, and soon major news outlets picked it up. Headlines blared, "Billionaire Lucas Steele spotted in small town with waitress and children. Secret family?" In a matter of days, reporters and paparazzi began swarming the diner, hoping to catch a glimpse of Clara and the twins. They camped outside Clara's apartment, snapping pictures whenever she stepped out with the boys. Ethan and Liam, who had never experienced anything like this, grew scared and confused. "Mommy," Ethan whimpered one morning, looking out the window at people with cameras. "Why are they taking pictures of us?" Liam clung to her leg. "Mom, I don't like it," he said. "I want them to go away." Clara felt her stomach churn with guilt and anger. She blamed Lucas for bringing this unwanted attention. "This is exactly what I wanted to avoid," she thought, tears in her eyes. Lucas tried to fix the situation. He hired security guards to keep the paparazzi at a distance. He issued statements denying that Clara was his secret family, insisting that he was simply a friend. But his attempts only fueled more rumors. The media speculated that he was covering up something big. At the same time, Lucas's own business empire started to feel the impact of the scandal. Investors worried about his personal life affecting the company's image. Stocks dipped as negative stories circulated. Suddenly, Lucas found himself in meetings with frantic board members who demanded explanations. During one heated meeting, a board member yelled, "You have to clean up this mess, Lucas. Our reputation is on the line." Lucas slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not going to abandon Clara and the boys," he shouted back. "They're my family." The room fell silent. That was the first time Lucas publicly acknowledged that Clara and the twins were indeed his family. Although he tried to keep it quiet, the news leaked anyway, and the media frenzy grew tenfold. Clara's phone rang constantly. Some reporters pretended to be old friends, trying to trick her into giving interviews. Others offered her money for an exclusive story. She began receiving letters from strangers, some of them supportive, but many filled with nasty comments. The stress was unbearable. One afternoon, after the boys returned home from school, Clara noticed they were unusually quiet. She gently asked, "Is everything okay?" Liam looked down at his shoes. "Some kids teased us today," he said. "They said our dad is a bad man who only cares about money." Ethan added, tears forming in his eyes, "They said we're famous now, and everyone will laugh at us." Clara hugged them both tightly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You're not bad, and neither is Lucas. This is just something grown-ups are messing up." That night, Clara called Lucas, her voice shaking with anger and desperation. "I can't live like this," she said. "The boys are miserable. This is exactly what I was afraid of." Lucas listened, feeling a deep pang of guilt. "I never wanted this," he said. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect you." But Clara wasn't sure there was anything he could do now. The truth was out, and the media machine was unstoppable. She felt her safe, simple life crumble around her. The last few nights, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of cameras and the frightened faces of Ethan and Liam. Meanwhile, Lucas found himself juggling the demands of his broken public image with his desire to keep his children safe. He knew this was a critical moment. If he pulled away now, he'd confirm the worst rumors. But if he stayed, he risked making things even more chaotic for Clara and the boys. In a desperate move, Lucas tried to reason with major news outlets. He offered interviews in exchange for privacy for his children. Some respected his wishes, but many did not. Soon, the entire country knew about Ethan and Liam, the twin sons of a billionaire father and a small-town waitress. It was a public storm that none of them had expected. And it was only going to get worse. As if the media scandal wasn't enough, deeper problems surfaced. Investigative journalists, now with their eyes fixed on Lucas Steele, began digging into his past business deals. What they found hinted at questionable practices. Rumors spread of bribery, hidden offshore accounts, and corporate intimidation. Lucas had always trusted his top managers and advisors to handle the details. But now, accusations piled up, and people began to wonder if Lucas was really the brilliant entrepreneur he claimed to be, or just another rich man stepping over the law to get what he wanted. Clara watched the news in horror. She saw endless debates about Lucas, half condemning him, half defending him. The scandal threatened to destroy not only his reputation but also his entire company. Investors backed away. Stock prices plummeted further. Employees at Lucas's businesses worried about losing their jobs. Clara realized that this could get dangerous. Angry people who had lost money or felt betrayed by Lucas might come after him, or worse, come after her and the kids. Panic rose in her chest. What if the boys aren't safe? She thought. One evening, she confronted Lucas outside the diner, where they had secretly agreed to meet after closing time. The once warm diner felt cold and lonely under the flickering streetlight. Clara's eyes blazed with anger and fear. "Lucas, you have to tell me the truth," she demanded. "Did you do those things? Are you involved in illegal deals?" Lucas's shoulders sagged. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. He shook his head slowly. "Clara, I never meant to do anything illegal," he said. "I built my empire as honestly as I could. But some of my partners, I might have turned a blind eye to what they were doing." His voice shook with regret. "I was so focused on expanding that I didn't watch closely. I wanted success, no matter what. And now it's all coming out." Clara felt her heart sink. "Lucas, this is exactly what I was afraid of," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Your world is dangerous. Now our children are caught in the middle." Lucas reached for her hands, but she pulled away. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling. "I swear I didn't know how bad it was. But I'll fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." Clara let out a shaky breath. "I don't know if you can," she said. "Maybe it's too late." Lucas didn't argue. He looked like a man on the brink of losing everything he cared about. "Let me try," he pleaded. "Please, just give me time." Despite her anger, Clara felt a surge of pity. She remembered the man who had once knelt down to help her clean up broken glass at a party, the man who had listened to her stories in a quiet cafe, the man who had shown so much love to Ethan and Liam. She lowered her head. "I don't want to hate you, Lucas," she said softly. "I just need to keep my boys safe." Lucas nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand," he whispered. They parted ways under that streetlight, the shadows long and ominous. The tension between them felt heavier than ever. Clara returned home, hugging her boys tightly as they slept. She wished she could shield them from every harm in the world, but she knew that was impossible. Lucas, meanwhile, went back to the suite he had rented. He paced the floor, making calls to lawyers, accountants, and public relations experts. He was prepared to sacrifice anything to protect his sons, even if it meant losing the empire he had built. The question was, would his sacrifices be enough? In the weeks that followed, the situation spiraled downward for Lucas. More documents surfaced showing shady partnerships and hidden financial transactions. Government regulators launched investigations. Some of Lucas's closest confidants turned against him, hoping to save themselves. One by one, his properties were seized or sold off at a loss. His once proud corporation crumbled, and with it went the lavish lifestyle he had always known. Lucas appeared on news programs, apologizing for his mistakes, vowing to cooperate with investigations, and pleading with the public for understanding. All of this splashed across every headline. As Lucas's world collapsed, Clara watched from the sidelines with mixed feelings. Part of her felt compassion, seeing him so broken. Another part of her felt relief, knowing that with his empire gone, the media might lose interest, allowing her children a chance at a normal life again. But the damage was already done. The media would forever label Ethan and Liam as the billionaire's secret sons. Clara knew she couldn't erase that. She tried to keep the boys away from the TV and internet, focusing on their homework, friends, and simple joys. One evening, after the boys were asleep, she heard a timid knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Lucas standing there with a small suitcase at his feet. His eyes looked tired, and he wore clothes that were far more modest than usual. "Clara," he said, his voice hoarse. "I've lost almost everything." Clara hesitated, unsure whether to let him in. He stood there, shoulders slumped, looking more humble than she had ever seen him. Finally, she stepped aside and allowed him into the small apartment. They sat at the kitchen table, the only light coming from a dim lamp overhead. Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "I came to say goodbye," he said softly, his voice quivering. "The investigations are ongoing. I might face charges. I have to go handle this. I can't drag you and the kids into it any further." Clara felt her chest tighten. Despite all her fears, she didn't want him to vanish. "What will you do?" she asked quietly. Lucas swallowed. "I'm going to cooperate fully. I'll confess what I know, pay the fines, maybe go to trial. I don't know what's next, but I do know I can't keep living a lie." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single piece of paper. "I've set aside the last of my funds in a trust for the boys," he said. "It's not nearly as much as before, but it should help them with college or whatever they want to do." Clara looked at the paper, her eyes watering. "Lucas, sigh." He shook his head. "Please don't say no," he pleaded. "I want them to have something from me. Something honest." She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Despite all the pain and chaos, Lucas was trying to do the right thing now. Lucas took a shaky breath. "I want you to know I'm sorry," he said. "For everything. For bringing the media storm, for not being there for Ethan and Liam from the start. I wish things were different." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She reached out and covered his hand with hers. "I know," she whispered. "I see you're trying to make things right." He nodded gratefully. "Will you tell the boys I love them?" he asked, his voice cracking. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears. "Yes," she said. "They should hear that from you in person, but if you can't, I promise I'll tell them." Lucas gently squeezed her hand, then stood up, taking his suitcase. They walked to the door together. It felt like the end of something, and maybe the start of something new. Before stepping out, Lucas turned back. His gaze lingered on Clara, and for a moment, they both remembered that night when they were just two strangers sharing stories at a tiny cafe. Then he whispered, "Thank you, for our sons," and walked out into the night. A few months later, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The media frenzy subsided, partly because Lucas's downfall was yesterday's news, and partly because Clara kept the boys away from the spotlight. She moved to a nearby town with fewer memories and fewer prying eyes. There, she found a small but cozy house that had a backyard for Ethan and Liam to play in. Lucas, on the other hand, faced his reckoning. He attended hearings and legal proceedings. Several of his former partners were charged with fraud and corruption. While Lucas was spared major jail time because he cooperated, he lost almost every financial asset he had. All that remained was the trust fund he had secured for Ethan and Liam. Over time, though, Lucas embraced his new life, free from the constant pressure of wealth and reputation. He took a job as a consultant for a small firm, helping them with honest business practices. He rented a modest apartment and found comfort in living quietly. He stayed in touch with Clara through phone calls or short emails, always respectful, always asking how Ethan and Liam were doing. At first, Clara kept some distance, unsure how to bridge the gap between them. But she saw that Lucas was truly dedicated to being a better man and a better father. He asked if he could visit the boys occasionally, just to share a meal or watch them play soccer. Little by little, Clara agreed. She saw how happy Ethan and Liam were whenever Lucas came by. They asked him about life in the city, about business, about why people had taken so many pictures of him before. Lucas patiently answered, always careful to shield them from the uglier details. He also taught them small lessons he had learned. Work hard, but don't forget what's really important. Money can help, but love is what truly matters. The boys, not fully grasping the seriousness of his words, nodded and giggled, hugging their dad each time he visited. Clara watched these moments with a gentle heart. She no longer saw Lucas as a distant billionaire. She saw him as a father who had made mistakes and was now making sacrifices to make amends. She saw him repair his bond with their children step by step. One evening, after Lucas took the twins to a nearby park, Clara invited him to stay for dinner. The house smelled of homemade pasta sauce, and the walls echoed with the boys' laughter. While the children played with toy cars in the living room, Clara and Lucas found themselves side by side in the small kitchen, stirring pots and setting the table. They talked quietly, no longer with anger or fear, but with understanding. Lucas apologized again for the harm he had caused. Clara admitted she might have been too quick to judge him before, though she insisted that she had been protecting her children. When dinner was ready, the four of them sat at the table. It was simple: bowls of pasta, some bread, and juice for the boys. But the warmth they shared made it feel like a feast. Ethan and Liam kept telling Lucas about their day at school, while he listened with genuine interest. After dinner, they enjoyed a small dessert, a chocolate cake Clara had baked. Liam giggled as he got frosting on his nose. Ethan tried to sneak an extra slice, and Lucas teased him gently. It was the kind of night that felt normal, full of love, and free from the shadows of the past. When it was time for Lucas to leave, Ethan ran up to him. "Dad," he said, using the word for the first time, "can you come back tomorrow?" Lucas's heart soared. "I'll come back soon," he promised, ruffling Ethan's hair. Liam gave him a big hug. "We love you, Dad," he said happily. Lucas looked at Clara, his eyes shining with gratitude and humility. "Thank you," he whispered. Clara gave him a small, warm smile. "We'll see you soon," she said. It was a far cry from the glittering galas or the fancy boardrooms where Lucas had once spent his days. But this modest home, filled with laughter and the aroma of home-cooked meals, felt more precious than any of that ever had. In the weeks and months that followed, Lucas remained dedicated to his children. He lived quietly, working an honest job, visiting Ethan and Liam whenever he could. He saved enough money to help with their future schooling, though not at the extravagant level he once could afford. As the boys grew older, they learned more about their father's past. Clara and Lucas explained it carefully, teaching them about mistakes, second chances, and forgiveness. The children understood that their dad had once been very rich and famous, but what mattered most was that he loved them. In time, the small family forged a new bond, built on truth and trust. No photographers chased them now. The drama of Lucas Steele's rise and fall faded into history. What remained was a father's promise to do right by his sons, and a mother's choice to let love heal old wounds. One sunny afternoon, they all met at the diner where Clara used to work. It was under new management, but the same old booths and counters were still there. Lucas ordered everyone milkshakes, just like he had that one night years ago. Ethan and Liam sipped their drinks, giggling at the funny mustaches the foam made on their lips. Lucas and Clara exchanged a smile, remembering how life had changed so drastically since their first meeting. They might not be wealthy or famous, but they had something priceless, a second chance at being a family. And in that humble diner, surrounded by the gentle hum of life, they found a quiet, beautiful redemption. Because sometimes, the strongest bonds are forged not in the glittering glow of a billionaire's world, but in the small, heartfelt moments that remind us what truly matters. And so they sat, together, ready to face the future, united by love, softened by sacrifice, and guided by the lessons of a hard-earned truth. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please go ahead and generously hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating tales like this. We'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next story.